So I think one thing we did find, and one thing I really like about this gathering and the whole ODR community is how diverse it is, how young it is, how we have people from different walks of life. We have young lawyers, we have technologists, we have judges here who come from all over and are willing to spend the whole day with us, entrepreneurs. It's really a very, very activist. It's a very, very diverse group. And the fact that we have come together for 2 days is a remarkable achievement. I've been watching the ODR movement now for 4 or 5 years, and it's really extraordinary to see how well it's doing and taking off. Now, one thing that the pandemic showed us was that we were a digital, we're going to become more and more immersed in digital way of doing things. We were all, people are stuck in their homes. They were doing their work from home. They were doing their entertainment from home. They're ordering food from home. They were buying things from home. They were meeting their children from, virtually from home. Everything had become digital. And therefore, I think what we know, which is inevitable, is that our economy and our society is going to be digitally intensive. Now, during that, at India, we took a slightly different path of building population scale digital infrastructure, which allows everyone to participate in the economy and society. And this is something which is ubiquitous and works everywhere. And let me give you my own example. And when I go to the airport, I take a cab from my cab company, and when I sit in the cab, I see the vaccination certificate of my driver, because that was one of the requirements during the pandemic. That vaccination certificate came out of a digital public infrastructure that was created here. Pramod designed it, and that's number one. On that vaccination certificate, I see his ID. It's usually an Aadhaar ID. He's used Aadhaar to verify himself. When we reach the airport, there is a toll gate. At the toll gate, he pays using FASTag, another digital infrastructure which we created, which is automatically debits his bank account. When he runs out of money in his FASTag account, he then recharges using UPI. When I reach the airport, I pull out my phone and show my Aadhaar details from my DigiLocker. And then if I'm in a hurry, I go to the DigiYatra line and do a quick face auth and get inside. So just in that space or that one journey from my house to catching a flight, I probably used 6 pieces of the infrastructure we have. And the same is true of the ODR world. In the ODR world, you use infrastructure to, when you have to make payments, you do it with UPI. When you need to sign off a document and need a digital signature, use Aadhaar digital signature. You store these documents in DigiLocker. So what we have truly is digital infrastructure at population scale that really enables you to run your life very easily. And it is meant to be ubiquitous, universal, cheap, and available to everyone. And now, when you think about the justice system, I think all these things are equally valid. And I believe that we are entering a world where the number of transactions we have are going to go up, because both it's so easy to do things, and second, we are going from a society which has been largely informal, which over the next 20 years is going to become very formal, and they're all going to become part of some system or the other. And therefore, the number of people who are participating in the formal economy will go up, and the number of transactions they do will also go up. And many of these transactions, and once we have transactions, once we have activities, once we have a sort of a mini contract in every situation, it's inevitable that there will be disputes, and it's inevitable that there'll be some issue that will come in the way. And therefore, I think just as we are creating all these digital platforms at population scale, we also need to have a way to solve the issues at population scale. And that's really what I think the ODR system is doing. The ODR system is gearing up for creating a way for millions of disputes and small transactions to be resolved amicably, digitally, without putting the load on the formal judicial system. And that's why, if you notice, many of the new things that are happening in India are all starting with a digital first approach. If you look at what's happening in ONDC, ONDC is going to create a remarkably inclusive e-commerce capability that allows every small business to participate in e-commerce, every small supplier to participate in e-commerce. And they're going to start with a digital first strategy where right from day one, the dispute resolution of commercial disputes on ONDC will use the ODR ecosystem. Similarly, what's happening with the account aggregator system, I think there's some discussion on that. Essentially, the account aggregator system will dramatically increase the number of lending transactions in India, and inevitably there'll be a lot of disputes on those lending transactions. So the whole account aggregator system is being designed day one again to start with ODR, and therefore, if there's a dispute in the lending process, then that will go to the ODR ecosystem. So this again is a question of how we design ODR first. And I think every transactional system that will come forward today will have this kind of an ODR first thinking. And that will automatically grow, and the transactions of that will grow as those systems grow. And then, of course, there's the whole issue of grievances, which again can be using the ODR system. They could be private grievances, grievances with government, grievances with regulators, grievances between investors and the companies. All these are grievances can again be tackled by ODR variant. And I think what's important about the ODR system is that it is going to be a set of uh, different companies and operators all providing, which means there's going to be competition, innovation, better ways of solving things. At the same time, one thing we learned when we built digital public infrastructure was that while you can have a number of companies, you also need to put the guardrails and you need to put the backbone for doing that. And I hope that we'll do something similar in the ODR world where all of them operate on the same APIs and the interoperability. I can take an ODR complaint from one platform to another if I'm not happy with the way they're dealing with me and so on. So there's stuff to be done to create a population scale interoperable, low friction kind of a system, which hopefully will happen. But I think this is something which is very exciting because what we're seeing in India is really two things. One is we are seeing the ODR movement, and at the same time, we are seeing remarkable work in the formal judicial system to use technology and improve things dramatically. And I think if the way with the which the traditional judicial system embraced technology, the way they were able to provide dispense justice during the pandemic, embracing video conferencing and so on, is very high. Another good example is using a multilingual translation, the SUVAS, the project which provides the multilingual in 9 Indian languages. And now a proposal is to use all 22 Indian languages so that people are able to get access to documents in their own language. They're able to get access to their information in their own language, and also making what's happening, the status of justice. Not only you don't have to come to a court, you can go to a CSC and ask questions, or you can get it on your own phone. In other words, making the whole thing much more accessible. So in other words, we're seeing two trends in India. One is that the judicial system is investing hugely in technology in a way to make it more accessible to everybody. And we have the ODR system evolving as a new way of doing things, which will allow millions of small disputes and other things to be taken off the table, which means that the judicial system can then focus on genuine disputes and genuine major issues and allow these small ticket transactions to move out. So I think this is a very complementary thing, which is unique to India. And I believe that it is something which is going to happen because we are only about halfway on our journey of, of creating that digital economy and society that we want. Because we did Aadhaar and UPI and all that, but we also have the ONDC coming up. We have the account aggregator coming up. We have the whole use of AI in a big way coming up. We have the logistical things happening, which is quite dramatic. So there's going to be lots of things that will require a way to sort out very easily, and that's where I think the ODR is going to come in. Now, what is this formalization that is happening? Essentially, many of the challenges in developing countries are societies have a very small formal elite and a large set of people who are in the informal system. They don't have access to many things. What we are doing actually is creating a way for everyone to participate. And historically, societies have been, there's no reason for a person to join the formal system because it only meant dealing with more bureaucracy, or it meant paying taxes. And therefore, in many countries, the informal system is outside. We are actually offering a grand bargain in India where we are saying that if you join first of all, we're going to make it simple to join the formal system with simple ways of onboarding with ID and so on. And then we are also going to enable people to use the digital footprint of their transactions to get access to services. For example, if I'm a small business, I can use the digital footprint of my data to get access to a loan. And therefore, instead of going to informal money lender or borrowing from my family or just growing my business from my earnings, I can actually get access to credit in an affordable manner. And suddenly there is a bargain where by entering the formal system, while I become part of the formal system, I deal with the rules of the game. Maybe I have to pay taxes, but I also get access to credit. And therefore, it's this kind of a trade-off which is going to encourage more and more people to enter the formal economy. And you're just seeing the beginnings of that. And that is something which will play out over the next 10 years. But I think in all this, it's all good to assume that things will go well, but you have to assume that things will go wrong. Many of our very sophisticated multi-party transactions. If it's a UPI transaction, there's a consumer app, say from Google Pay, there's a bank, maybe SBI, the other bank may be HDFC, and he may be using WhatsApp Pay or Phone Pay. And if something is, how do you resolve the dispute? In the case of e-commerce, we'll have the same issue, whether because I'll order on one app, it'll be delivered by a different supplier and from a different supplier and delivered through a different agency. So when we create these kind of complex multi-party transactions, it's inevitable that there'll be disputes. And therefore, I think thinking from day one on how to make these new systems ODR first is very important. So I think what you guys are doing is very important. All the best.